Welcome to Sailing Bridget. The winter projects are step-by-step guides for things you can build in the workshop ready to fit to the boat in spring. This one is about making Dorade vents. In the series, I also show you how to make a bowsprit and a stern arch. Click the bell icon to be notified when I upload the videos on fitting these to Bridget. Subscribe to my channel to see more of my videos. For more about my book, Budget Sailboat Restoration, go to my book page. Okay, so this is what we want to finish up with. This is a completed Dorade box, not quite finished yet. So how do we go about building it? Well, we start out the plank with the lengths that we want. You need to do this pretty accurately, and there's a few tricks that help. So I marked the first one at 11.5 inches. I could put the end of the tape on there and mark another one at 11.5 inches. Difficult to get that accurate, to keep the tape exactly in the right place at both ends. A much better way of doing it is to say I want 11.5 twice. That's 23 inches. I could mark 23 inches. What's the problem with that? The problem is that doesn't leave me anything for the saw cut. So I need to allow a little bit extra. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark at 11.75, and then I'm going to mark at 23 inches plus the 1/4 inch I allowed for the first cut. So that will take me to there, and that gives my second cut, and that's the two sides there. Okay, so that's the first two lengths. I'm going to mark both of these lines with a square so I know exactly where I am, and I need to cut between those two lines to get the right length. Now you can do this any way you like. So I can use a bench stop under there, and then I can use a handsaw. You want one with a stiff back. So a stiffened saw will always give you a straighter cut than a flexible one. If you stand directly over it, looking down on the saw, then you should get a nice vertical cut. It's a bit tricky. There are better ways of doing it if you've got the gear. We could use the same technique again. We could put the square across, and we can line up our skill saw and cut across there. That'll make a pretty accurate cut. But there is a third possibility, which is over here. Right, so this machine is a sliding miter saw. It will cut straight, but it will also tip at an angle, so it enables us to cut chamfers as well. Really useful. It's a pretty accurate machine. That's why I'm using this. Right, so start it. Ear defenders are on. First cut. So having cut all the pieces to length, the next thing we need to do is to put a chamfer on them. And to do this, we need to tip the machine to 45 degrees. So there's a big wheel at the back, which we can slacken off, and then the whole thing tips sideways. It's got a gauge at the back, which indicates 45 degrees. Just here. But do I believe that? Probably not. I always like to double check, and the way to do that is to get a decent square. This is a metal engineer's square, so I know it's accurate. I can then move the blade down slide the square underneath it and measure the angle of the actual saw blade. Now what I'm looking for is that it's just a fraction over 45 degrees. So when I put that on, it's just rocking just a little bit. The reason for that is that when we do a beveled edge, we're looking for an angle to go like that. Ideally, it would fit perfectly. What we don't want is to finish up with an angle that does that, with a gap on the outside. If we cut that 45 degree angle slightly over, then any gap is going to be on the inside edge. We can fill that with glue and you'll never see it. So, and I'm literally talking about half a degree, maybe a degree. It's just fractionally overcut. Okay, so that's now got the machine set up and we're ready to cut the first mitre. Hearing protection on, got my glasses on, set it up, and then and there we have the mitre cut. Right, having got all 4 pieces cut to the right size, what we need to do now is dry fit them together. It's a really important step. If you don't dry fit it, you don't know whether the joints are going to work, and you don't want everything covered in glue and then find that you need to adjust one of your joints. The easiest way to do that is just to use some painter's tape. Stand the box up and just tape the joints together with a couple of strips of painter's tape. That will hold it plenty firmly enough. Right, and if we got our cut accurate, we should finish up the box that goes together with nice tight joints on the outside. As I say, if you've got a slight gap on the inside, that's not critical. That's going to fill with glue and then be covered up. Okay, so we're ready to glue everything together now. We've dry fitted it and that all fitted together no problem. Doesn't really matter what glue you use. I'm using some stuff called Titebond 2. The important thing is you need a good quality waterproof glue. You can use a good wood glue as long as your joints are quite close fitting. If not, use thickened epoxy. It fills gaps perfectly. We need to apply an even layer to each side. Make sure you get a good coverage. I like to just wipe it with my finger. Make sure it's covered right to the edges on both sides. Right. Once you've got a nice even spread of glue on everything, then start assembling your box. Put the first one together, and what I do is I get another piece of tape and just tape that together, just to hold it in place while I'm doing the assembly. Because the problem with boxes is they want to go all over the place while you're trying to put them together and clamp everything up. Right, so I've now got my box just taped together. What I'm going to do is now put it in the vise to get a little bit of pressure on. You don't need a lot. Just need the vise out a bit further. Right, once you've dropped it in the vise, turn the vise up until you are literally just touching, no pressure. You're just closing the gap so that it can't move. And then a couple of speed clamps, one underneath. And again, just very light pressure, just enough to hold the clamps in place. The same on the top. Right. So once everything's held in place, then I can slowly increase the pressure a little bit at a time on both the clamps and the vice jaws to make sure that everything stays square, and I just need enough pressure to see that I'm squeezing a little bit of glue out on the glue line. Don't overdo clamping with glue. If you put too much pressure on, you're just going to squeeze all the glue out and you won't get a good joint. Make sure everything's square, which it is, and we're done. Leave that overnight to dry. At the moment we just have an open-sided box. I left that till last deliberately because if you try and cut the lid and then fill the box around it, it's very difficult to get the size exact. It's much easier to wait until you've got the four sides made, then you can simply position it over the top of a piece of wood and draw around with the pencils, making sure it doesn't move. And now we know exactly what size our lid needs to be. Right, so we've got the top glued in. I've given everything a quick sand. What we need to do now is cut the holes. There's one going in the top to take the cowl, but the tricky one is the one in the side for the drains. So we need a hole for the water to drain out the bottom of the box, but what we need is half a hole as a way of doing that. Take a piece of scrap, clamp it to the side of the box so that it's flush, tighten the clamp up. We need a hole saw, about somewhere between an inch and an inch and a half. What we're going to do is drill a hole with a hole saw down the join between the box and the piece of scrap. You want a drill that will give you a variable speed. You don't want hole saws running too fast. So line it up where you want it, put it on the edge. There we go. And you can see we've drilled a round hole, but it's through the box and the clamp. So if I now take the clamp off, half the hole is in my scrap, half the hole is in the box, and I've got a nice half round hole for a drain hole. Right, the next step is to drill the hole in the top where the cowl's going to go. So I need to mark off whatever my box is wide. So I finished up with a box which is 8 inches wide, so I want to mark at 4 inches, and then I want the same this way. Mark the centre of the hole. I've got a big drill with a 4-inch hole saw, and again, work slowly. These things have a lot of torque, and there we go, we're centred. Right, I don't want to go all the way through. I just want to go through far enough so that the centre drill just goes through the work. The reason I'm not going all the way through is because if I go straight through in one go, this is going to tear out as it comes out the bottom end. So what I want to do now is to remove the clamp, and then you can see I've got a hole that goes right through now, but nothing on the inside. So I'm going to put this in the vise, which is the easiest way to do it, but you can clamp it any way you can. Make sure there's nothing underneath that the drill's going to hit, and then we simply go back through the other way. There we go, nice clean 4-inch hole ready to drop the Dorade cowl into. Okay, quite possibly you'll need to clean this up with a bit of sandpaper as well to get it exactly the right size. It says it's a 4-inch, this one's a fraction over 4 inches. Right. So we've got holes drilled, got drain hole, got top hole, got box made up, everything's been rough sanded down. The last job I need to do is to round over the corners. You can do this with just a hand sander and just takes a bit of time. Just round the corners off until they look right. That's all. Don't take too much off the corners. When you round the corner off, every bit you're taking off is reducing the size of that joint, so it's not quite as strong. Okay, I'm going to do that using a router, which makes a nice round, just quicker and easier. Okay, the other thing we need to do, the final thing we need to do, these bits that you cut off earlier when you made the chamfers, we're going to put those in the corner and glue them in. I'll show you a bit closer. So they're just going to glue in the corners to reinforce it. So here's one of the ones I made earlier, and you can see I've got those triangle pieces in each corner glued in to reinforce it, and I've rounded the sides off with a router to make a nice neat finish. What we need to do now is sand it down and fit it to the boat.